Broadcasting from the United Kingdom, the name is Topping. Tony Topping. This is the Tony Topping Show. Are we recording? Oh, we're on air. Hello, listeners. Good evening. Good evening, and welcome to the Tony Topping Show. And tonight on the show, we've got special guest Anya Briggs, who before going on air was nearly dying of a choking fit, but she's all right now, I think. And she's live on air. Well, it's pre-recorded actually, and she'll be telling us about super soldiers, alien greys, and the title of the show, which is Who the Hell Wants to Go to Mars? We've decided the title to be, and that is because the head of PayPal, or the founder of PayPal, wants to go to Mars, it would appear, and has held a secret Bilderberg-style summit of UFO researchers. In fact, I wasn't invited because I'm too hot to handle. But not only that, those of us who know the score, who are acutely psychic, would ask the question, who the hell would want to go to Mars? And 8 out of 10 time travellers can't be wrong by saying it's a shit tip, don't go there. Anyway, Anya, good evening.
Good evening, Tony. That's probably the best introduction to an interview I've ever had.
Thank you very much. It's amazing. So I'm going to just read out your bio because it does deserve a readout. What it says here is that you are a powerful psychic medium who, with guides, assist those who wish to access more of their cosmic consciousness and to more clearly understand their role in their own empowerment through understanding and healing past and present lifetime issues and blocks. Through natural clairvoyant healing and mediumistic abilities, you can see a problem and offer real-life solutions to her clients. I was talking to you, actually, before we went on air, and I have to say that in the 30 years of dealing with this mayhem that makes me a psychic Jason Bourne, Monty Python style, I might add, you're probably the only individual who summed up what's going on in about 5 minutes. It was interesting, that bit of the conversation. You've been in the media. You've been on the TruTV series Conspiracy Theory with Jesse Ventura for season 3, and you've also appeared as a psychic advisor on SyFy Network's Joe Rogan Questions Everything. In addition, other television media appearances, and this is interesting, you will probably feature playing yourself in a documentary feature film called Don. How is that pronounced? Peyote?
Don Peyote.
Oh, Don Peyote, yeah.
It's a play on Don Quixote.
Got you. And you've just done absolutely. Also, what is interesting, you've played a prominent role in Find Me, which is an organisation of talented psychics and law enforcement officers who professionally search and rescue, trying to find people who are missing, etc. So, without further ado, I don't want to waffle on any more. Tell us what it's all about out there in this crazy paranormal world, Anya.
Well, increasingly, I'm finding that there's this, as I've spoken about in other interviews, but it's coming to a hilt now, Tony, where I'm really finding out the separation between the wheat and the chaff, which is something I talked about in my Bases series that I was an interview subject of for Miles Johnson's Underground UK production Bases, where he interviews people who have unfortunately been involved with mind control programs like I have. I'll
just direct the listeners to his channel there, Anya. Sorry, so that's YouTube. That's YouTube channel. It's Megawatts 1066. And there's some astounding stuff on there. Carry on.
Definitely check out Bases 15 and Bases 21 if you want some backstory on me further as well.
Yes.
Just due to time limitations, I can't really go into. But yes, there's a hidden culture of abduction in our country, and something is coming to the hilt about this. And it's through mind control methodologies that this is trying to be suppressed. It is subtle, it's stealth, and it is getting harder and harder to hide, because people are becoming more and more psychotic and split and divided within themselves as a result. And how can you hide that separation? How can you hide that schizophrenia, if you will? It becomes obvious to people, and as it is, there's an all-out assault on researchers in the community right now, and this is the elephant in the room that nobody wants to touch with a 10-foot pole that I am talking about, because I am not interested in dysfunction and being in a room full of Stepford wives. I'm interested in having conversations and knowing people and loving people who are fully cognizant and fully in control of their faculties. And not talking about this is tantamount to harming someone. So I'm trying to do the loving thing here in talking about this. I'm not doing this to harm anyone. I'm not doing this to humiliate anyone, and I'm not doing this to discredit anyone. On the contrary, these are brilliant people who are being attacked right now. And you, as a targeted individual, Tony, I'm sure can attest to what it's like to be a targeted individual. It's a very lonely road because you have to battle not only the consensus by committee that is the court of public opinion in our culture, who says this stuff isn't real because all they do is watch mainstream media and the BBC and CNN and think that that's the official story. So you have to not only deal with the abuse once over, but it's a twice-fold abuse and an abusive response, because then you're neglected and treated like crap when you try to talk to someone about it. I've had family members who live, less than 20 miles from me, and they just had a baby this morning, and they didn't even tell me about it. I found out about it from someone else. That's the kind of excommunication you get when you come out like that.
Is that because you're that nutter woman who speaks to aliens, Anya?
Exactly. I do what the voices in my head tell me to do. Exactly.
And I'm that nutter.
I am the first to make fun of that. I know how crazy it sounds, but unfortunately, the terrible, traumatic thing for these people who want to excommunicate me is that I have done a psych evaluation, and I'm sane. That's the problem. I wish there was a bill I could take to make.
Who is it that wants to excommunicate you, Anya, without probably knowing this?
It's a cousin. It's not necessary to go into it. It's just, I use that term. We're not Catholic. I was actually raised in the Jewish faith, but it's a term I use because that's what it is. It's like in the Church of Scientology, they don't admit that this goes on, but it goes on. It's the practice of if you're critical of Scientology, then you will be considered what they call a suppressive person. And in fact, I had the Celebrity Center visit my website recently because I was speaking negatively about L. Ron Hubbard and his satanic leanings and how he did a Moonchild satanic ritual with Jack Parsons. This is a fact. This is all documented. They triggered
the UFO air war, according to one intelligence agency within the U.S. government.
I can believe it. They opened up portals.
They did.
See this weird science that is part of my life on the daily basis. This kind of thing is a part of my life, and I oppose Satanism. I oppose anyone who thinks that do as thou wilt is a good thing. It's not. I oppose anyone who thinks that. L. Ron Hubbard was a dyed-in-the-wool fanboy of Aleister Crowley. All he wanted to do was get Crowley's approval, and the same way with Jack Parsons. And then he's also a sociopath who then in turn turned on Jack Parsons and ripped him off of thousands of dollars. And Jack Parsons stopped being friends with him. So this is who forms that, and this has to do with that kind of exposure of this. But what they do in the Church of Scientology is they will literally make you a non-entity if you leave the church and you're critical of the church and you're critical of...
Can I ask a question, Anya, on this? And this may sound slightly odd, but I watch these Hollywood actors from Tom Cruise to a few others, and they do extremely well for themselves. Is there something in Scientology that has provoked this to make them do well for themselves?
I really don't want to make the interview completely about this, but there's a part of this that has to do with neurolinguistic programming and mind control, and there is a lot of CIA funding that's been done covertly with the Church of Scientology. It is a cult, no question in my mind. It is a cult. And what it does is it does a surface scrub. Many people respond supposedly on the surface to books like Dianetics and so forth, but just for the purposes of being a devil's advocate, I tried reading Dianetics and I could only get as far as page 2 before I put it down, and I said, this is neurolinguistic programming. He has created inverse speech patterns within the language of the book. It's not written in a normal way. If you read the language, it doesn't really make sense, but to a certain portion of the population who are particularly susceptible to this type of influence, they will become hypnotized, and they will start thinking that this is the way in the light, and that this will save them, and that this is the ultimate in pop psychology healing. And in fact, what it does is it really doesn't change anything. It might do a surface scrub, as I mentioned, but it doesn't really solve life problems. What it does is it makes you fall in love with the Church of Scientology and want to give away all your life savings to it. It's a mind control tactic. So in that sense, yes, actors are more often than not likely to heighten suggestibility. People who are performers, people who take direction well, tend to more often than not be drawn to these types of things. There's another cult that unfortunately I had an actress friend who I just become acquaintances with when I was younger, who kept persuaded me somehow to go to some, and she said it was a self-help seminar, and she didn't really go into detail about it, but it was the, what is the group? I'm drawing a blank as to who they are, but it's a very similar type of thing. It's a cult. It's one of those sort of based on the early 70s self-help model of pop psychology.
Like Werner Eckhart and Est, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's the guy who created us, but it was a second version of it. I've
actually been through the Israeli version of that here in the UK. Believe it or not, I'll never forget one of the processes we did. Stayed with me for the rest of my life. Actually, not that I'm saying that it was, but it was what it was, Anya, was indeed what you're saying. It was mind control. It is basically a form of mind control, isn't it? Definitely so. And you have the guru teacher, don't you, who's putting the suggestions forward.
Yeah, it's called Landmark Forum.
It's called what, sorry?
Landmark Forum. It's just another cult.
All right, I see. Okay.
Yeah, I went to one of those things, and they literally would not let me leave until I gave them $400, which I did not.
Yes.
I had to push my way out of a woman who was physically blocking the door. And they kept yelling at me and telling me that I didn't know what was going on in my life, and how did I know myself if I didn't look at myself? And I said, I did this. I've been in therapy. I know how to look at myself and know what I'm feeling bullied here, and I don't want to give you $400. Thank you very much. And they almost literally did not let me leave the room. It was very weird and scary. And that's the kind of strong-arm tactics that this organization does. Now, I know people who've done Landmark Forum, and they go on and on about how it's the greatest thing in their life, but honestly, they don't change. They tend to get worse. I lose touch with these people because they become completely fatuous. They just become really surface scrub about it, and nothing really gets solved. A lot of times people with addictions will find their way into these things, and this is what's happening right now. It's time to break the matrix and stop looking at hierarchical structures and big daddies and, authority figures to solve your problems for you. It can't happen in the 21st century, and it won't much longer. As these things are falling apart with the economic structures and the realities of our day-to-day grind and the agricultural structure, the educational structure, religious structure, it's all dogma and hierarchy and top dog, underdog, and this will not stand. It's unsustainable. It's psychopathic. It's following more orders from corporate mindthink, groupthink rather, and that is not going to work.
No.
You have to become an individual in order to stay plastic, in order to stay fluid, in order to receive new information at lightning speed, which is what's going to happen in the next 100, 150 years for humanity. We're going to be seeding more planets, but the solution is not running off to some other faraway place to find ourselves and to grow and to gain extra resources. The resources are all here. We have it. No matter how many people are on the planet, there's unsustainability and there's sustainability, but mostly it's within mind control that the sustainability exists or does not exist. It's based on how free you are in your mind versus how not free you are in your mind.
Well, I do get the impression, Anya, from the mind control point of view, which you've demonstrated at one level, and now we'll probably move into the next level. I do get the impression that that humanity and the human collective is actually occupied by a very ancient force. A very ancient force indeed that has been, and the question is not the what, but I think the question is more the why is it here. There's no doubt in my mind that it exists. There's no doubt in my mind that governments of the world, especially your government, are actually aware of it, and it seems to be heading us down a certain mind-controlled direction to which we are slowly becoming aware of. Why do you think UFO researchers are being targeted? I'm one of them. I am targeted. Why do you think this is happening?
Well, first off, I would say the difference between you and the researchers that I'm basically unfortunately exposing as having attended this Elon Musk Bilderberg-style UFO secret summit.
Just for the listeners, what Anya is talking about there is there's been a gathering of UFO researchers, all the top names. So I am informed with a guy called Aaron. Is it Elon Musk?
Elon, E-L-O-N.
Yes, who is the founder of PayPal, and this has all been very secretive. I certainly didn't get an invite because I'd probably tell him what I think. But anyway, do carry on, Anya. So yes, the summit, carry on.
So you have to understand there's a recipe book for mind control, and what works to hypnotize one person and make them forget certain things or program certain things into them does not work for another person. So what the powers that be will do, and this is a human ET contingent we're talking about, they have their orders, the humans that do this to the other humans. It's coming from a non-human entity or a non-human force above the capstone that runs things, or it's breaking down. They have been running things for thousands of years, but as consciousness and awareness grows in the human race, people are waking up and they're not standing for it anymore. It's a magician's trick. So once they understand that there's a little man standing behind the curtain pulling the strings for eons, that all it takes is to pull the curtain back and say no more, and that tends to have a freeing effect on a lot of people. But beyond that, it's a bit of a sticky quagmire that people can find themselves in if they allow themselves through a series of choices to reach a point of no return, in which case these parasitic entities will get their talons in you. But they can't do it without the assistance of a human format. Enacting that. So they do have their stooges. They have their own mind-controlled stooges who are basically operating on remote control. And Elon Musk is one of them. And his people, quote-unquote, he has a black sedan cadre that he hangs out with that are involved with these kinds of things that involve needles and syringes and scopolamine, also known as devil's breath, and all kinds of mind-controlled drugs and altered states they can put you in. Another part of the recipe book that can be a combo platter of how to get people taken under is neurolinguistic programming, like what Dianetics was trying to do, like what L. Ron Hubbard was using, was a form of neurolinguistic programming that works like a charm on certain people who are willing to suspend disbelief and not critically think and want to look for a savior and want to look for authority for everything in making their lives better, and it's just not going to happen. So that willingness to suspend disbelief is another third of the mind control combo platter. And then the third part of it is their genetic code, their DNA. That what you've been handed genetically does affect your susceptibility to mind control, if at all. And a portion of that does have to do, there is something in it to blonde hair and blue eyes is the number one most susceptible. That the Nazi scientist that Joseph Mengele was working on discovered that the genetic traits for blonde hair and blue eyes also give away the genetic traits for susceptibility to heightened suggestibility and pliancy, your ability to be pliant and receive information from the passive mind, from the subconscious mind, to be able to do your directive. So I think part of the reason that the Aryan fetish that the Nazis had for blonde hair and blue eyes comes from that genetic scientific knowledge, that you can take a blonde haired blue eyed person and 9 times out of 10 they'll be a hell of a lot easier to submit than somebody from another genetic lineage. That's not necessarily true for everyone, but
where is the evidence, Anya? Sorry to interrupt. Where is the evidence that this man?
It's through the tests that I believe Joseph Mengele did on mind control.
Where is the evidence that it's the conclusion of the man you're talking about, though, which is not possibly the opinion of the host or Blog Talk Radio. What I'm saying is that the guy you're talking about, how did you reach that conclusion?
Well, I don't know if he has. I wasn't even thinking about that with Elon Musk.
Right. Sorry,
how
I beg
came
your pardon.
to that conclusion? Yeah.
Yes, right. So you've not reached that conclusion about him. Great.
Okay. So first off, I think it's highly unlikely I'm going to be slapped with a lawsuit for defamation of character, because what I'm saying is so out there that if they were to publicly address it directly, they would just look like idiots.
Right.
So to address what I'm saying, a psychic in New York is saying that one of the richest men on Earth is owned by gray aliens is probably not good press for the powers that be to acknowledge.
Yes, right, I see.
To address.
But yet in the 1950s, just for the listeners' interest, the US government was actually fully aware from intelligence information that it gathered via channels via the CIA and the Army and the Air Force, was fully aware that there was indeed what you're talking about knocking about in the 1950s. Important clarification to add, but they were aware and are still aware that there is something out there lurks, Anya, so you're onto it, aren't you, basically?
Yeah, well, yeah. I do energy work, and I work on people's bioenergetic fields only with their permission.
Right.
But sometimes people are wide open. It's kind of the same. It's not like I'm trying to find it. It just happens because the person is so open.
Yes.
They don't have any security protocols for their energy field.
No.
And I tell people, you're too open. You have to ground yourself and close yourself down, because what will happen is you make yourself susceptible to people taking advantage of that. And it doesn't have to be in the form of an invisible entity who's a mind controller and a parasite. It could be just sociopaths pick up on vulnerable people, and it's catnip for them, and they see something in a person which they might subliminally be picking up on as their bioenergetic field as being wide open. So I do this as a public service. I say, look, if somebody's energy field is too open, it's too wide open, it's equivalent to having a store and never locking it up at night.
If you look at the head of the US remote viewing program, Ingo Swann, during the Project Stargate, Project Scanate, which is something I'm also, paranormal espionage is something I'm very familiar with. Now the thing is, he was very accurate with his remote viewing on numerous occasions, and he was also concluding as well, a conclusion reached was that in some cases these non-human entity intelligence will occupy a human physical vehicle. So now we have a picture building up of the potential for a non-human entity physical vehicle to occupy somebody who wishes to drive forward the openness and disclosure of UFOs. Not.
Yeah. So that creates a really complex, multi-leveled experience there, because it becomes complicated to explain to the workman's plow, the Joe Schmo,
the boys in the bar who the lads in the bar, the lads in the British pub who quite often will walk over to Loon here, the alien Loon, discreetly and have very deep conversations with me about it, then go away with the rest of the lads and have a pint. You'd be surprised in Britain the amount of men and women, but blokes in the pub, which is, we kind of like leaning to the lads in the pub who are very, very intrigued about all this and have reached certain conclusions that they might want to not talk about to their mates in public, but they have been reading. So here in Britain, the great British bloke has read very deeply about what is going on around them, and they're not blind to it. So you're certainly onto something, Anya. And so we're at the stage where we're painting this picture of this summit with UFO researchers. Are we at the right stage of the game here, yes?
Yes, absolutely. And I love the English bloke. I love the English. I just want to say, I wish the English sensibility that's coming around, that's really listening and really taking this seriously, never mind the mainstream media in Britain, but just the average bloke. I'm so proud of you. I don't mean to sound patronizing, but I'm so proud of the English people, because I feel like they really are the ones who are waking up and smelling the coffee. And I do believe there are people in the States and in Canada who are getting this as well. Canadians get it. They definitely get it. They're very open-minded. But Americans are a tough nut to crack, and it's very frustrating sometimes, because I live in such a cynical town. I live in New York City, and nobody believes any of this stuff, and it's really a dead zone for this.
It's all down here, isn't it, though, that nobody believes any of this stuff, but down the road is the Masonic Lodge with all its symbolism and the cult esoterica, and you'll be interviewed by the media like I will be, and the guy interviewing me will be going, UFOs that don't exist, how stupid, and then 2 days later he's down the lodge with the boys doing the esoteric thing.
Right.
And it's just grossly hypocritical, frankly, isn't it?
That's the schizophrenia that we're talking about. As I say, not as I do. There's something we do in public, and there's another thing we do in private, and those lines are blending, because honesty is becoming a trend, believe it or not. It's getting harder and harder and harder to lie. The energetic of the planetary grid is changing and shifting, and yes, there is assistance from benevolence in this regard that is not human as well.
Yes.
we focus so much lately in the alternative media about this topic on the negative, but you need to understand, how are you going to learn if you never test your metal, if you never find out what you're made of? What is the truly loving thing to do from the benevolence end if they're considered big brothers and sisters who are helping us out? They're not here to save us. What is the loving thing for a parent to do when they see their toddler learning how to walk? The loving thing to do is to not always pick them up every time they fall down. The loving thing to do is to let the kid fall off the bike when he's learning to ride a bicycle. Sometimes. You have to let the kid fall before he can stand on his own and walk on his own. And the same goes for learning and education and lifting the veil on what this darkness really is about. And how are you going to learn if some advanced being who's been around, I don't really consider them advanced, and this is part of the reason they said I'm not intimidated by that, but they said, we are your equals. We've just been around a lot.
For the listeners, Anya, who's they?
ETs.
Right, sorry, right, yeah, okay.
Extraterrestrials.
Right, yeah, okay, got it, yeah.
And they like that I don't put them on a pedestal. I get mad at them, we get in fights. I know this must, can you imagine what that looks like, where I'm standing in my home?
Please describe how a woman in New York gets into fights with an alien. The lads down the pub are going to love it. Just please describe.
It's an open argument with no one. So to be a passing observer, a lot of it's telepathic.
Yes.
Like I said, I just do what the voices in my head tell me, darling.
Yes.
So,
you're sensitive.
I am. And I have implants. I have telepathic implants. I have little objects embedded in my skin. And one, take it or leave it, there's actually a photograph that I have that's on my Facebook page, and I've posted it online on my blog, Anya Briggs channel. I woke up one morning not long after I started having my awakening, and there was a bright purple, just as fuchsia and deep purple as you can possibly imagine, bright, unambiguous triangle bruise on my left elbow that I had no memory of acquiring the night before. It was upon awakening that I had this thing. And I gasped out loud. I had enough sense to take a photo of it on my cell phone. And I immediately burst into tears because I've been having these amazing peak experience conversations with these beings, and they were so uplifting and loving and kind. And then I felt like a tagged cow after I woke up with this thing, and I got so mad at them. This is typical of what has happened with me, where I don't understand, I don't have all the full information at my disposal, but they told me that it would help me hear them better telepathically, that it was actually like a set of stereo speakers, if you will, to help me hear them telepathically better. And in fact, I did. It was the difference between my initial encounters with them, which sounded almost telepathically like a megaphone, or a walkie-talkie, if you will. And then I wake up this next morning, and I'm having a conversation with them as clear as a bell, as if I'm having a telephone conversation with someone, or as if I'm speaking with you.
What planet did they come from, then?
I want to say those were Pleiadians/Plagiarans. There's a lot of controversy about what to call them, but they were sort of my gateway drug. That's usually how it happens. I don't know if I was being manipulated or not, because there's a lot of manipulation that goes on as well, and trickster energy, but my gateway experience with them was mostly Andromedan humans and ET humans who come from the Pleiades star system.
Andromedan humans, what do you mean by them?
They would be from the star Procyon, I believe, which is I want to say it's in the Andromeda galaxy.
Yeah.
And they're humans, but they have capabilities, advanced capabilities that are a fusion of technology and spiritual advancement.
Are they like are they the ones with the unusual foreheads?
I wouldn't know. Define unusual. I mean, the Pleiadians are typically very beautiful people. They look like what you and I would consider supermodels.
They look exactly like us, except the forehead is of a precise design. The forehead, the forehead area is specifically designed for some reason to be different from us.
Well, there's a depth and breadth of life in the universe that is just
fantastic.
And look at the human race on this planet and the depth and breadth of variety and physical features on people. It's just, remarkable. And to say what one race looks like or one other race looks like is a little difficult to describe sometimes.
What is interesting to know, Anya, is the fact that India, if you watch the research of India, there was all across the Indian press, there's some sort of think tank in India just chucking this stuff out into its media. And obviously the Western media ignores it, but I've been researching it very deeply. Anything to do, however, with Andromeda and the Andromeda galaxy and UFOs in it, and anything to do with that has been removed. It's not there. And that is because there's stuff going on probably with other life forms in the Andromeda galaxy area, and you say it sounds crazy, but there you go.
You're saying that any Indian reports?
Yes. There seems to be some sort of yes. There seems to be some sort of think tank that's within the Indian kind of military complex that appears to have been leaking stuff to its media from about 2009 to about 2012. It kept coming out with all kinds of stuff, including stuff to do with the Vietnam UFO crash, which was not you can't see it anywhere. It's just absolutely incredible information as far as I'm concerned, including the measuring entities who can walk into rooms and give sonic booms. And they'd been looking at this very, very, very closely indeed. And oddly enough, anything to do with Andromeda is missing, however. There was a couple of articles to do with Andromeda. It's been removed off the servers because there's obviously something going on in that neck of the woods, bizarre as it may seem. And what can you say, Anya, when you've got a 7-foot blonde Amazon female Andromeda in your bedroom? I mean, what can a man do? You know what I'm saying? It happens.
I mean, in my experience, it was a 7-foot tall, bald guy who looked like the biggest superhero, who was perfectly proportioned, but just 10 times bigger than any normal human you could think of, even the biggest wrestler or professional athlete you could think of.
It's the height of them that's the shocker. It's how tall they are.
High and just perfectly proportioned. I mean, just like a superhero. Like,
yes.
But twice as large.
Yes.
And extraordinary specimen of a human being, if that's what they are, in fact.
Or are they some sort of genetic hybrid? We're not too sure. If you look at the Peter, the New Zealand incident where they monitored his, the Peter guy, I've forgotten his name now, hair of the alien, where they monitored they sent the genetic strain of DNA for forensic analysis. The blonde hair from a blonde alien woman, and it's and related to the fact that certain genes had been removed that would cause sexual diseases and all that kind of thing. So, for the listeners' interest, there's definitely something going on. I think we might be going slightly off piste, but I find that it's a fine example. What we've just talked about there, Anya, is a fine example of putting a secret straight in front of people, because everyone will then laugh and think how crazy and insane that it is, and yet nothing could be saner. As to what has gone on, and so I think this brings up. We're intrigued to know then about this UFO researcher conference that happened. Did any 7-foot aliens turn up there then?
Not that I know of.
No.
Just to go back for a moment about that blonde hair, I believe that story was talked about in a documentary that Mary Rodwell was in about contactees. The Australian, the ACERN.
ACERN, yes, indeed.
Organization that deals with survivors of anomalous experiences like abductions and so forth, and she sort of broke the lid on that, and she's a wonderful woman. I had the pleasure and privilege of getting to know her a bit recently, and it's just a tremendous honor to know Mary. She's just a lovely woman and doing such good work for people.
Well, this is it, you see, and once again, your government's military was on the case with the remote viewing program, because they set up a website called Exceptional Human Experiences by a woman who was involved in operations with remote viewing with the CIA and the military. So we've got this bizarre tandem going on, haven't we? This bizarre parallel running. You've got Mary Rodwell there doing her bit, and then if you look, you've got people who have indeed been involved in government and so on, and the military, who are also looked at this subject to do with ETs, haven't you?
Well, to go back to that conference in Buckingham, PA, I want to mention that. How do I know that this person is who he says he is, or who's not saying who he is, rather? It's because I was able to read off his bioenergetic field. I was able to read off the bioenergy of the other attendees, some of whom I know, some of whom I consider good friends. Some of them I'm extremely fond of, which makes it even more traumatic and difficult for me. I probably in one fell swoop knocked out 30 potentialities for communications with people because they're probably not going to want to have anything to do with me now. You know, regardless of my intent, which was completely benevolent and only in the best, highest interest of everyone involved. You know, let no good deed go unpunished in my experience. Like, what was fun telling the world that some of your friends and colleagues have been hijacked by parasites and that they're being mind controlled. It's not fun. There's no glory in it. There's no reward other than you caring about their best, highest interests and wanting them to be well. I don't want to be in a room full of Stepford wives the rest of my life. I want to be in a room full of people who are engaged and sovereign, and the words coming out of their mouths are their own, not somebody else's. That they are having their own thoughts and their own feelings and they're able to make their own choices fully cognizantly and not with the aid of some kind of parasitic mind control element. And that's easier said than done in today's world. And it doesn't have to be as dramatic as these entities that are supposedly running the show in Bucks County. It can be, you know, as simple as watching television programs over and over and over and going on autopilot and allowing yourself to just let the information wash over you without being a critical thinker about it, or without receiving the information and not examining it further and doing the research yourself further about what the information is. Whether it's through CNN or whether it's through the alternative media, whether it's through, you know, people like David Icke. I don't always agree with everything David Icke says, but I'm glad that he has this opportunity to, you know, promote or publish or whatever, speak his mind and be able to say what it is, although I'm not entirely certain he's running the show himself anymore. I don't know about that. I go back and forth about that. So there's a battle I see within him, as I see within many public figures, and I'm just more honest about the battles that I've had to go through as a survivor of mind control programs myself. And I wish these people would just come clean about it. It's kind of, I don't mean to out people like people in Hollywood get outed as gay or something, but this is dysfunctional. This is way, way more problematic than somebody coming out about, you know, worrying about their career because they don't love the publicly correct type of gender that they love. It has way more to do with personal choice and personal control than anything to do with people's biology.
Who was it that went there, Anya? Why did they go there? Why was there a summit? Well,
I personally think that most of the people who went to that thing were worked over really well even before they accepted the invitation to attend. I think there was a program in place to mind control these people for a long time. One of the researchers who shall remain nameless, who I know, I think chose to go dark for career purposes, and I've seen that happen with many people in the research community. They let their insecurities rule them. They become defined by their insecurities, which is no one promotes me, no one takes care of me, no one takes me seriously. And in which case you have to be a strong person to be a serious researcher in a field like ufology, which is, you know, traditionally ridiculed. And most of the people that have been in this a while have been the subjects of ridicule, and they let it get to them. You can't take it personally. That's the number one thing. That's how they hook you, by answering to your trolls and letting it bother you, and you know, trying to be keeping up with the Joneses about it, and trying to get published in that article, and scratching for that, you know, keynote speaker appearance at that UFO conference, which is completely 9 times out of 10 run by intelligence agencies anyway and funded by them, and has a CIA element or a black ops element. I mean, I could tell you some stories just about the UFO Congress alone that would blow your mind. That
do so. We're all ears. Go for it.
Well, and they have nothing to do with the keynote speakers at all. They have to do with what goes on in the crowd at these things, what goes on with mind management and mind influence at these things. I mean, it's a turkey shoot. When people go to those things, they have no idea what happens when you go to these things. And this is why I'm campaigning so hard right now for a refusal to participate in hierarchies anymore, for establishing egalitarianism in information access and awareness, and promotion, self-promotion through the internet self-promotion through media that you make of your own, that you don't look to outside media. You make the media your own. And, I have some problems with Alex Jones, but he's a good example of that. He started out on cable access, the dinky cable access channel in Austin, Texas, and now he's made I guess you could say an empire for himself. And he did it through self-empowerment. And I don't agree with him on everything by any means, but he did it himself. He really did. He wasn't funded by intelligence operatives or agencies or billionaires, as so often is the case with these types of summits and things like that. And it's just recreating on a micro level the same ways we've been living our lives on a macro level. If you think you're going to find anything at one of these UFO conferences, you aren't. The people are still spouting out the same stuff they spouted out before, and I'm kind of repeating myself from another interview I just did with James Gilliland when I say this, but I feel it's important to mention it in this interview as well, because you have to work hard to not repeat yourself, but you also have to work hard to communicate effectively and clearly in a way that makes sense to, like you said, the blokes down at the pub. And I hope I'm not sounding patronizing here, but some of the information I have is disturbing, and it's hard to take. It's not pleasant information.
The trouble with that, Anya, is, of course, the viewing public will switch off.
Right.
If you look, for example, at Alex Jones, and he did an interview with Piers Morgan, he made a very important, love him or hate him, I have a sneaking admiration for him, and he was arguing about gun control with Piers Morgan. Actually, he made a bit of an idiot of himself, because did Alex Jones, because the public switched off from him, because he was that buffooned with Piers Morgan, trying to make him look an idiot, that he forgot to mention the fact that with your First Amendment, it is being tinkered with a bit more than what it should be, which is a very, very important thing. But unfortunately, Mr. Jones went on and on and on, and the public turned off. He went on and on and on about folks like this, that, and the other. You've got to be so subtle with the general public.
Well,
very subtle.
Actually, I would disagree with you, Tony. I think that was theatrics, absolutely, and that he is a passionate person. Listen, he's a guy from Texas. Most people from around the world don't understand Texas. Most Texans don't understand Texas, but Texas is unique unto itself, and the Texan personality is unique unto itself, and
my point being, however, is that he missed out the very crucial point that the public need to know, which is your First Amendment was being tinkered with in order to somehow enforce some sort of control.
I don't think it's our place to decide what it was that he wanted to talk about. I think he did a really good job of mentioning Operation Gladio. That put that very important CIA false flag operative on the forefront. He mentioned a lot of black ops, false flag, manipulative things that were going on that are keenly involved with the removal of rights in the United States and the implications for it for rights around the world. And I actually thought what he did was a kind of a palate cleanser, and it was kind of calling, maybe it wasn't done very elegantly or as politely as perhaps you would have liked or I would have liked, but I think he got the point across, and I think he woke up a lot of people, believe it or not. The mainstream media always has a heyday with anyone who comes from the...
Oh, I know.
So, of course, they're going to make him a buffoon and make him ridiculous, and of course people who are heavily entrenched on either side of the political fence, whether it be left or right, will always have their opinion about him anyway. He's a strong polarizer, but he also unites a lot of people. And I can't believe I'm promoting him because he made fun of me on his show after I was on Conspiracy Theory, and God bless Jesse Ventura. He's such a lovely guy. He came to my defense. But, that's the same attitude that Alex had about David Icke 20 years ago. He called him the turd in the punch bowl. Exactly. And, in the conspiracy community, and now they're like best of friends. So
he censored me when I gave an interview for InfoWars. They actually censored me. They did a very bizarre thing with me.
Yes, they did.
Including taking a photo of me when I was pissed up on my birthday and using that, as the which isn't on really. I just felt. I think you do have a point, though, Anya. Yes, who are we to say how he should have done it or what he should have done? I just thought that the crucial point was missed.
Well, here's the thing about the paranormal and Alex Jones that he's not talking about, but I know because I know people who know him personally. I know more than one person who knows him personally. I know a lot of people who know him. We both have a lot of mutual friends. And he acts like he doesn't know who I am, and I know he's like got people looking at my site, and if not looking at my site, there are people talking about him, talking about me to him, and mentioning things that I've been involved with if they're not outright mentioning me personally. So he's dropping hint bombs left and right about this kind of thing, but he's trying to do it in a surreptitious manner. And if he has to make sacrificial, burnt offerings in the form of you and me, so be it. He thinks it discredits it, but then at the same time, he talks out both sides of his mouth. He'll attempt to discredit and marginalize and diminish people like yourself and myself, but at the same time, he has us on the air, or he talks about it, and then he will, in the next sentence, talk about psychic experiences he's had and paranormal experiences he's had, which I know he's had. I've intuited it, and I know people who've confirmed it for me.
We have a guy here in the UK called Dr. Chris French, who seems to just follow me around whenever I'm on mainstream TV. He just appears and tells me that a UFO that's flying backwards and broken every air regulation in the book is a plane. What is interesting is that he's had paranormal experiences, but keeps it all very quiet.
I think that might be kind of like what some of the Black Ops people I know, or people in mind control programs I know who are whistleblowers, will do, in that they will dump an information dump and walk away.
Yeah.
Then 5 minutes later, they'll deny all of it.
Yes.
This is a typical intel thing that they will do. I'm not saying Alex Jones is intel. Everyone wants to say he's a CIA get, or he's a CIA. It's not my business to say whether he is or not. People have approached me very, very apoplexically, their eyes bugging out, saying, "Oh, I know he is. He's a mind control." Well, so what if he is? I think he, on the whole, he sort of works in grand gestures and large swathes. He doesn't really work micro. He does macro more than micro.
He does, doesn't he? And he's obviously hinting at the micro. He's obviously hinting at the veil that's going on. Well, he's not even hinting.
And for that, I think he owes some respect for that.
Yes.
The way he's doing it, I think, is it follows the mind. He's just throwing it back in the face of the methodology and the protocol that was created through the intelligence model. I don't think people understand that.
Explain more, Anya.
Well, he knows how they work. He knows how COINTELPRO works. He knows how disinfo.
Just for the listeners in the UK who may not be familiar with that, what is COINTELPRO? What is all of it?
COINTELPRO is I want to say, an acronym for counterintelligence. And what that means is it's just more mind management, and there are a variety of tactics in their recipe book. If you're a targeted individual, like a public figure, like Alex Jones, for instance, or someone else, what will happen is they will try nasty tricks to get you to be discredited, or make you think you're going insane, or threaten you, worst case scenario, or make you try to commit suicide from all the frustration of it, or so forth. And they've been successful about it in the past. The FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the Central Intelligence Agency both have years of experience in psychological operations and maneuvers. They've tried all of it on me and then some, as well as the NSA, which is the more commonly known as no such agency here in the States, although it's probably more powerful than the FBI and the CIA combined.
Probably more powerful than the government. In fact, probably is the shadow government.
Yeah, and it's not human run at the top. It's not human run at the top. I've actually had communication with people at the NSA who are like the number 2 people there, and they're not human. They're not human.
How did that happen, Anya? How did you get it?
That's through synthetic telepathy. That's through a series of conversations I've had, and through a series of, actually a phone call as well, but that's a little more mysterious. There was a phone number given, and I called the number like an idiot.
Was that the phone number given via synthetic telepathy?
Yeah.
That's happened to me, including text messages of phone numbers as well.
You're an experiment. You're a test subject.
Yeah.
And I've had that happen. I've had, I was a test subject for a synthetic telepathy experiment where I was told a precise date and time, and to go to Plaza Hotel at 12 noon on Christmas Day.
Yes, this is what happens, yep.
And I went, and there was a weird experience I had with real 3D people who were there. And
what was the experience?
Well, I walked in, they said, dress up nice, wear a suit. I did. And I walked in, and they told me I was going to meet with, I know this sounds really naive now, but I was at the time, I had just awoken, and I had just had my peak experiences, and I had my little purple triangle implant to make it easier to hear what the ETs were saying to me and everything, and I'm just becoming aware that I'm star-seated, and I'm this and that, and my whole life has been a lie, and this is really my real life, and this is really who I am, and I have all these psychic abilities that I'm waking up to, and what is going on? And so then I get this, and I'm automatic writing to the tune of 650 pages over 9 months' time, and it's all coherent, not one spelling error or grammatical error in the lot. You know, all these incredible things happening to me, and so I get this message to go to the Plaza Hotel at 12 noon on December 25th, 2008, and I would meet with Valiant Thor, the alien who supposedly was working with the Pentagon in the 1950s, and this was documented by Dr. Frank Stranges, who was a theologian, who wrote a book called Stranger at the Pentagon, and I was a complete fangirl of this guy. He was this dashing man who supposedly had 6 fingers and 6 toes on each hand and foot. And but other than that, he was completely unrecognizable, you know, unnoticeable from any other human, other than that he didn't seem to appear to age at all, or hardly at all, and that his the way he appeared was that of a 35-year-old man, perhaps, but he was supposedly like 350 years old. So, or older, even maybe 600 years old, I don't remember exactly. And I was just enthralled by the story, and I didn't know if it was real or not, but I was certainly enthralled by the story of Valiant Thor and how he was having meetings with people like Dr. Stranges, and that his UFO was supposedly over Groom Lake in Nevada, which is supposedly where Area 51 is now, that he had meetings with President Eisenhower, I believe it was, and the story is just incredible, and I highly recommend that you read it. Of course, there's a heavy Christian bent to it, because Dr. Stranges was I believe a minister, I'm not sure, but he was very, very Christian, very, very religious man. So I believe that this individual, Thor, if he did meet with him, was, just tailoring the language in a language he could understand, so that there were references to Christ a lot, and they talk about the Christed consciousness and awakening and how Christ was a prophet. He was one of them, basically, that he wasn't entirely human, that he had alien DNA, and that it was sort of explained as sort of but a firm belief in God and a firm belief in, benevolence and love and a higher power and so forth. And this is what Dr. Strange is talking about. So I was just I was just a fangirl. I was just like, wow, this guy's so cool. That was it. I didn't know what to make of it, but I thought it was neat. And then for 2 weeks prior to the 25th of December, I was just getting pounded with messages to go to the Plaza Hotel at such and such a date and time. And it was inescapable. It was like every time I said no, this overwhelming feeling would come over me that would be like, no, you have to go, you have to go. I mean, I was just like harangued for weeks to go. And what was supposed to have happened is that I was going to meet him there, and then, and this is before I knew I was a MyLab, before I knew anything, I was so naive, they said that they were going to take me to an underground facility in New Jersey and introduce me to several human Anunnaki who were blonde-haired, tall, thin types, who were my family, my genetic family. And they then spoke to me. They were allowed to speak to me briefly, but I was under the impression that they were being held at a base, and it was not it was sort of a negotiation that was going on between them. And whether they were being held against their will or thereby volunteer effort, it was unclear. But this was so dramatic, and I didn't know what to make of it. And keep in mind, I thought I was going crazy half the time. I didn't know what to believe. I didn't know what was happening to me. But then at the same time, I'd wake up and there'd be marks all over my body and purple triangles on my arm, and where is this coming from? And I was seeing UFOs all the time around that time, and just having incredible paranormal experiences. Beings were appearing in my room. And of course, I'm thinking I could be just going insane. Except when I showed up at December 25th at 12 noon at the Plaza Hotel in 2008, I was told to wait by the Palm Court, which is a very famous restaurant that has a well-known tea, a very famous afternoon tea that you go for. And so that was what I was told we were going to go there for, a Christmas brunch or something, Christmas Day brunch. And so I'm sitting on an ottoman across from the Palm Court, and I'm waiting for Valiant Thor to show up. And at one point they said, well, he might not appear as he normally appears. And in fact, the minute I walked in the room, there was a very strange man who...
What did he look like, Anya?
He was human, and he was bald, he was overweight, and he wasn't dressed up for the Plaza Hotel, I can assure you of that, but he was standing at the bar directly to the left of the entrance. When you walk in, there's a bar, or at least there was. They've renovated the place, but at the time there was a bar. It may still be there in the entryway next to the lobby. And I walked by the man, and immediately he was sending out a signal of his bioenergetic field. I mean, he was deliberately sending it out in waves. Mm-hmm. And I turned and I said to myself telepathically, I said, oh, there's an agent. And I don't know why, but he was telling me he was military intelligence. And he wouldn't look at me. He didn't face me. He stood at the bar resolutely drinking a scotch and soda, or a scotch on the rocks. And he looked straight ahead. But he was literally sending out signals left and right that he was a military guy. And I immediately was like, well, I either thought, well, one of the suspicions I had was that this was a military government project. And it was probably more that than any Valiant Thor meeting, but I was being so harangued to go to this place at a certain date and time, it wouldn't stop until I went. So I just succumbed. What was that?
I was saying, what is sinister about this is the fact that, it all sounds very jolly and comically funny,
right.
But it's very sinister.
Because
because you have a government agency. Well, it's not a government agency. It's organisations that are acting outside of government and outside of the democratic process that are deploying a form of technology, and that's a fine example of it that appears to lure you into a hotel.
It gets weirder.
Yeah?
I haven't even talked about the weird part, the truly weird part.
Gosh.
So I am kind of flipped out, but I kind of assumed there would be a government presence there. I just sort of knew, if this is a trick being played on me, of course there's going to be a agency element to it. And it did feel like the joke was being played on me. I kind of knew this in the back of my mind. There was really no real possibility in my mind the Valiant Thor was going to take me to the Palm Court for tea, but I just, every time I tried to say, go away, stop, they would just push it even further. So I just decided to succumb, and just with knees shaking, I went. I was scared, but I went just to see what would happen, partially out of just this damn curiosity I have to find out more. And so I'm sitting on this ottoman, and the man at the bar I'm sitting there, and it's 12:15, and I'm getting ready to leave. I'm like, okay, he's not showing up, obviously. That maybe this was just this was the experiment portion, right? And no, it isn't over yet. So I'm sitting there getting ready to get up. I'm getting really frustrated and feeling very exposed and vulnerable, just feeling like I'm going to be taken somehow, or something bad's going to happen to me. And shadowy agents are going to, scoop me up by both armpits and throw me in a van and never to be seen again. And this man at the bar walks into the Palm Court area, down the hallway, and towards where I'm sitting. And he's taking his time, and he's got a little smirk on his face, little smile, a little Mona Lisa smile, really. And I'm noticing he's wearing this LL Bean kind of regular guy sort of jacket, sort of windbreaker jacket. I don't know what you call it in England. I think it's called a windbreaker there too, but just a very sports, you'd buy it from a sports catalog kind of jacket, and just regular guy khaki pants and what looks like hiker boots, kind of. Not dressed up for the plaza at all, again. But what was really unusual about him, and he was overweight, and he was bald, and sort of maybe I want to say about 50 years old. But what was really really unusual about him is he was wearing these cobalt blue sunglasses without rims on them. They were very, very unusual glasses. And I've never seen anything like them before or since. And they were rimless. But they were cobalt blue and instantly noticeable. And I couldn't stop staring at his cobalt blue glasses, and my eyes were bugging out as he came closer and closer to me. And then he comes up to me, and he just tips his hat to me, He's not wearing a hat, but he does the tip your hat motion to me and smiles and keeps walking, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this guy is in on it, and I just watched him walk away from me and go around the corner again back towards the area near the front by the bar. And I'm thinking, because I've been getting these telepathic messages, I'm saying telepathically, you know, where are you, meaning my contact, and this man's voice says in a southern Tidewater, Virginia accent, or some kind of vaguely American southern accent, I'm right around the corner, come and see me. And I don't know about you, but I've never heard of any encounters with aliens that had southern accents, southern United States accents. Yeah.
Time travelers.
Possibly. So anyway, I've had enough of this crap. I knew it was a setup from the get-go, but I was really getting tired of being played with. So I get up, and I'm getting ready to leave. I wasn't going to wait anymore for anything or anyone. And I walk towards the exit, which is the same way I came in, through a revolving door by the entrance, near the bar. And the man is on a cell phone now, talking to someone. And I can't really hear what he's saying, but his voice is the same voice I just heard in my head. The southern Tidewater region, southern Virginia, kind of southern, I don't know where he's from, but American southern accent, right? And I am not having it anymore. I know this guy's playing me somehow. And I'm standing behind him, glaring at him, and I'm getting ready to tap him on the shoulder and say, look, buddy, what's going on here? I've had about enough of this. This isn't funny anymore. And I'm just standing there and glaring at him and glaring at him and glaring at him with my arms crossed. And he just casually turns around, he takes his time, and he looks me up and down like a guy doing a cat call, and he just says to his friend on the phone, because they told me to dress up nice, and I did look nice, he says to his friend on the phone, very casually as he's looking at me, the project looks beautiful. And then he turns around again and keeps casually talking as if nothing had happened.
They have been at it, haven't they? They have been naughty boys and girls, haven't they?
Yeah, and
I was
stunned. I walked out of the hotel. I was just stunned. And I watched him. Not 5 minutes later, I'm just standing there. I promised I would call my friend on the phone because she was really freaked out. She thought I was going to get taken to a base or something. So I called her up to let her know I was okay and told her what was happening and how weird it was. And as I'm talking to her on the phone, standing outside in Columbus Circle, right outside the Plaza Hotel, he suddenly appears with 3 other men who hadn't been with him the whole time, and they were also dressed. They were big, burly guys. One guy looked like a lumberjack. He was wearing like a plaid, flannel shirt, and they weren't dressed for the plaza at all. But suddenly 3 other men appear, and they all get into a Range Rover vehicle with Pennsylvania plates and drive off in the direction of the FDR Expressway, which is the east side of Manhattan. And I was just stunned. And the man never stopped being on the phone after that point. And he got in the the passenger front seat of the car, and one of the guys got in the driver's seat, and the 2 other guys got in the back. They didn't say a word to each other. They hadn't been with each other until that point. And the man on the phone just looked at me while he was talking on the phone through the window, and I just stared at him like, I can't believe what's happening here. I was just played. Like, I can't believe what is going on. I'm in some kind of program. I'm in some kind of project. And that was the first tip-off. I knew this wasn't all ETs necessarily. Could be co-joint, but that was pretty concrete human, if it was. As an interaction. Or
what is astounding about them, Anya? Well, it's not astounding, but what is surprising is they're not covert. They get overt in this.
Oh, they were overt. They were sticky about it.
You'll have the smart-ass intelligence guy in our mainstream media going, well, I can't see them doing that because all intelligence work is covert. These people are overt, and they like to know.
Oh, they like to toy with you. They like to toy with you like a cat plays with
Yes, they do. And you will walk past them, and for me, it takes about a day to suddenly realise, because part of my mind goes, that didn't happen when it did.
Yeah.
And it takes
that's
about...
That's COINTELPRO, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, it is. And it
that
takes...
didn't happen when it did. That's
correct.
Of COINTELPRO.
It is. For example...
I can't believe this is happening, but it's happening.
Yeah, but it's happening.
COINTELPRO, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. And there's a delay with me of about 2 to 3 days when I suddenly realised that person who walked past me did what they did. quite intentionally. It happens to
the
me
eye thing in the bar,
the eye thing in the bar, or the thing that happened to me on King's Cross Station where a woman walked past me and just said he's on his mobile phone now as she walked past me. And numerous other incidents of unmarked helicopters and people following me and mysterious text messages and this, you know.
Tony, you're just crazy. Why can't you just accept that you're crazy, Tony? This isn't happening to you.
Absolute loon tone. Do you know, I find, Anya, if I go up to my local supermarket with my tinfoil hat and speak to the aliens, that I get a better reception outside the equivalent of your Walmart. Whereas, you know, I do, honestly, I find the signal's quite clear up there. Actually, you know,
that's not accidental, I'm sure.
No, it's not accidental.
But Tesco's
Tesco's. But what is sad is what is sad about all this is that is a very sinister example of how these people work who are testing this technology, and that's what they're doing. They're up to something with some form of technology. They like to make fun of you while they're testing on you. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And our governments at some level must be aware of this. They must be.
And it just shows you the level of maturity these people are at, which is basically a 13-year-old boy, which is why I don't take them seriously anymore at all.
They couldn't take what I took, Anya. They couldn't stand. They could not withstand what you have withstood or what I've withstood.
They're total hypocrites because a lot of them are just mind-controlled cowards. And part of the reason they worked on me or they worked me over as hard as they tried to is because I'm immune to a lot of this. The reason I am a survivor and not a victim of this, and I'm boycotting things like the Super Soldier Summit, is because I'm not interested in victim identification. I'm interested in...
What is the Super Soldier Summit? Survival. What is the Super...
Yeah, that was an event that just happened in California that was organized by a woman who doesn't have hardly any money at all, and yet she's able to fund this year after year. This was the second one. I think she was funded by CIA sources, quite honestly. And it's a summit, like a summit, you know, a meeting, a conference, of people who've been in these programs. Most of the people who are speaking are either researchers, like Douglas Dietrich, who I really like a lot. I consider him a friend, but I think he tends to affiliate himself with some people who are less than legitimate. Unfortunately. And then there are people who I know and I care about, even though I don't like a lot of them, or some of them rather, who are in the programs with me, like Max Spears, like James Rank, like James Casbolt, like all these other people, Laura Blackwell. All these people have recovered memories of me in these things, or they've consulted with psychics who said that I was in these things with them, or had multiple corroborations that I was in these things with them, and yet they act like I don't exist, and or they live to discredit me. Like Sarah Stanga, you know, and these people are insane. They're not insane by choice. They've been driven insane by these different things, but they live very fractured lives and they're not well, and or they're playing the intelligence game to within an inch of their life because they've been very programmed to do so, like Alara, which is not even her real name. She doesn't even give her real name.
Alara, is that the lady who's...
They go back and forth. They'll say one thing. They'll say they have a history of being in military intel. They say they're in the military, and then they say they weren't in the military. You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing that muddies the waters, but that's typical Black Ops. You know, I'm going to dump information on your plate, and then you ask me about it later, I'm going to deny everything. And people say, well, that makes them liars. Well, yeah, I guess technically it makes them liars, but what they're trying to do is cover their tracks so they stay alive. I understand why they're doing it. Indeed. So, but, you know, people don't want to believe that. That's possible. They don't believe that the Jason Bourne kind of thing is real, but it's real. I know of at least two people. I know two people personally who, one of whom I did a reading for, and I didn't ever watch the Jason Bourne movies at that point. I didn't know anything about this. But I intuited that she found a safe deposit box key that in Alter she knows where to put it in whatever bank it is in the greater New York City area. And she opens up the safe deposit key, and there's guns and passports in the safe deposit box, of which she's not consciously aware, just like in the Jason Bourne movie. I swear I hadn't seen that movie before I intuited this. I didn't know anything about that. And then she is used as a presidential model monarch slave. She unfortunately comes from a very political family. Her father was best friends with Barry Goldwater, who was very invested in the UFO he was interested in uncovering the UFO cover-up, and has ties to a lot of high-level politicians in the world. She's used as a monarch's presidential slave who's taken to events. There's a costume warehouse or a haute couture warehouse in Queens that I intuited, where she has all the codes for carte blanche account to rent out these dresses, and she goes to these high-profile events as an escort for these men, and she's never on camera. She knows how to avoid the cameras. And she's had affairs with leaders of state, and she's used for blackmail purposes and information gathering. And this is what a lot of monarch slaves are used for in Hollywood and elsewhere, and political maneuvering and so forth.
Just for the listeners, Anya, just describe it basically for the UK listeners that Monarch is a program control system for assassins, isn't it?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes.
You can find out more about that online if you research
you can.
Victims, survivors of this, like Kathy O'Brien.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. I swear I hadn't read up on any of that, and this is it was quite shocking, and she was kind of at peace with that, but it also triggered her programming, and we quickly lost the friendship, which is typical. If you make the victim aware of what's happening to them, they often will use layered programming as a defense mechanism and to make sure that you are out of their life immediately. So she quickly soured the relationship. Things went south really bad quickly. Then there's another woman I know of online who has recorded her experiences as an MKUltra victim and survivor, and you can look into the MKUltra mind control programs, which were initially the research from mind control for those programs and Manchurian candidate type things came from, once again, surprise, surprise, the Nazi scientists and doctors who worked on victims in concentration camps in World War II, and one of the chief pioneers of mind control was Joseph Mengele, who sometimes goes as Dr. Green in the United States as his second life, or in South America as his second life, where he was sort of shuttled around back and forth, which is a little unknown thing. But in his new life, he was known as Green rather than Mengele. So, and I know, for instance, Max Spears, he's a CIA mind-controlled victim. He has a little bluebird tattoo on his arm that's very effeminate and typical of a CIA program where they would tag monarch slave boys and girls. He has very little memory of getting this tattoo. He's kind of a masculine guy. He used to do street fighting for a living, and he's got this very effeminate bluebird tattoo on his arm that he has hardly any memory of getting, and a man telling him, hey, you might want to get that tattoo. That might be a good idea. And he has no idea who this man was.
What I'm interested to know, Anya, and this is very interesting, is in terms of the Jason Bourne movies with the program known as Treadstone. I don't know whether you saw that, but he was subjected. Jason Bourne was subjected to a mind control program called Treadstone. The thing is that there was a character in that movie called Pamela Langley, I think it was, who was CIA, who went after the people who were behind this. Do you think, in the great American dream, in the democratic processes of government and all that, what Eisenhower said, do you think that is happening, that they are being pursued, that there is war in the ranks at the moment with all this, about the ethics of it all and what's going on?
Yeah, there's always wars inside intelligence agencies. They all hate each other. Right. It's all about jockeying for power and positions of power. There's some really good guys and gals in there too, but I haven't met them directly, but I know they're there because they're keeping me alive. I know that much. And I don't think it's to spread disinfo, because I have enough corroboration of my experiences and physical markings on my body to corroborate what's happening to me, including implants in my teeth that I have no idea where they came from. And my dentist, I've had 6 dentists look at this, including a crew of people Dr. Roger Lear is working with, including a radiologist. 3 or 4 dentists have looked at it with him, and a radiologist, and then I've had 3 separate dentists look at my x-ray as well, and nobody can come to a conclusion as to what it is. It is, my dentist has never seen anything like it in 26 years. So If it's human or ET, no one can say, but I'm willing to think it's like, a military-based agency or some kind of no such agency type thing.
Yeah, that's very true. It's what's happening in the UK as well. There's definitely something going on here in the UK where there's something acting out of the democratic process, doing basically what the hell it likes. Tell me, there's 5 minutes to go before the end of the show, Anya, can you tell us what you think the end game is with you? And this, we were going to talk about stuff that wasn't related to you, but you've actually wheeled a fascinating story of what goes on behind the scenes with illegal experimentation, unethical carries on with mind control. What do you think the end game was or is with you regarding this then? These guys, obviously on Christmas Day, didn't turn up for nothing. The project looks beautiful. What project are you?
I have no idea. I wish you could help me. I have an inkling. I have an idea that I'm a part of many projects, not just one. I'm useful to them. That's why I'm alive as well. I'm very, very useful to both sides. So I'm used as fodder. I'm used as disinformation perhaps sometimes, but not always. Sometimes I'm used as a message board. Sometimes I'm used as a relay for codes and activation in people. Positive, hopefully not negative, but possibly negative. But I would ask people to look within themselves in their research about what the end game is as well. It's not up to the survivors of these programs to describe what it is, because sometimes we can't see the forest for the trees, but it's really more of a collective effort that it's going to take to have people comparing notes and talking with one another. Obviously, one of the perfect built-ins that the controllers of these people in these mind control programs have is when a person is confronted about their mind control experiences, they will either shut down, become suicidal, or end the conversation with that person immediately and never talk to them again, become very violent, either physically or verbally. And it's a perfect way to shut down any kind of dialogue. The only way you can figure out what's going on is if you have an information hub. And they know this, so they've got layered programs in the people in these programs. So we're not necessarily the best people to create communities over to help solve this problem, because we all have built-in blocks. But if people start researching this, I mean, it's known that the CIA has done this. It's known that MKUltra exists. If you think that the MKUltra program stopped in the 70s or 80s, you're kidding yourself.
Yes.
It's very much alive. It's very much real, and they're using us as a beta test to try it out later on the general populace. So it is in your invested interest to look into this further, as scary as some of the information might be. Now, the good news is I think the programming's breaking down, and I think people are waking up. I think that's with assistance from benevolent ETs and people inside agencies who want what's in our best, highest interest, and don't want to control us to within an inch of our lives, and want us to have privacy, and want us to have sovereignty over our own minds and our own bodies, because that's the next evolutionary step in humanity's growth process. It's just inevitable, but it's not going to happen if people succumb to willful ignorance. That's got to stop. People have to look into this themselves and decide for themselves if what I'm saying is true. I don't necessarily benefit from saying any of this stuff I'm saying. You know, the only benefit is that I know I can sleep at night, and I know that I've been as honest as I could possibly be. You know, it's up to you to decide if this is real or not, but bear in mind there's going to be a lot of cognitive dissonance when you research this stuff and you decide to go down the rabbit hole, because it's so incredible what it sounds like, what I'm talking about. But make no mistake, this technology is real. It might seem like magic to you, but really at the end of the day what it is tech. So just look into it yourself and you'll see that I'm not lying.
Anya, thank you very much indeed for coming on the Tony Topping show. It's been astounding, absolutely astounding having you on. I think you've communicated very effectively to the mainstream public the sinister goings-on that some of us have to put up with. And let us hope that Eisenhower is correct, that only a knowledgeable citizenry will be able to cope with this and overcome. And I hope to have you as a guest again, and I hope when we get into the big wide world of making my own film, etc., that you will appear as a contributor on that. It's been absolutely tremendous. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tony. Of course, it'd be an honor. I would welcome it. And thank you for all the good work you do. I really appreciate it.
No problem. And if you're a member of Majestic or any of these secretive government agencies that are out there and you want to speak to the Tony Topping Show anonymously, please drop me an email at tonyopsufo@hotmail.com. Our guest has been Anya Briggs. This is the Tony Topping Show. Good night.